Alright, so for this equation, I have 3 to the power of x times 5 to the power of x squared is equal to 15. So my only variable in this equation is x, so that's what I'm going to be solving for. And for my solution, I'm going to first start by dividing both sides by 5. So I get 3 to the power of x times 5 to the power of x squared over 5 is equal to 15 over 5. So 15 over 5 is 3, so now I get 3 to the power of x times 5 to the power of x squared over 5 is equal to 3. Now I'm going to divide both sides by 3 to the power of x. So now I get 3 to the power of x times 5 equals 3 over 3 to the power of x. Now 3 to the power of x and 3 to the power of x cancel out, so I'm left with 5 to the power of x squared over 5 is equal to 3 over 3 to the power of x. Now 5 as a denominator, that's the same thing as 5 to the power of negative 1. And this is equal to 3 times 3 to the power of x as the denominator. I can rewrite as 3 to the power of negative x. Now, if I have something in the form a to the power of m times a to the power of n, this is equal to a to the power of m plus n. So 5 to the power of x squared times 5 to the power of negative 1 is going to equal 5 to the power of x squared minus 1. And this is equal to 3 to the power of 1 minus x. 3 is the same thing as 3 to the power of 1. Now from here, I'm going to take the log on both sides. So I get log 5 to the power of x squared minus 1 is equal to log 3 to the power of 1 minus x. And if I have something in the form log a to the power of b, I can move this exponent b to the front. So it's going to equal b times log a. In this case, I have log 5 to the power of x squared minus 1. I can move x squared minus 1 to the front. And I also have log 3 to the power of 1 minus x. So I can move 1 minus x to the front. So now I get x squared minus 1 times log 5 is equal to 1 minus x times log 3. Now, I'm going to take both of these logs for base 5. So I'm going to take the base 5 of both of these logs. And if I have something in the form log base a of a, this is simply equal to 1. So log base 5 of 5 is equal to 1, and I get x squared minus 1 times 1, which is the same thing as x squared minus 1, is equal to 1 minus x times log base 5 of 3. And now I'm going to subtract 1 minus x times log base 5 of 3 on both sides. So these two cancel out, and I get x squared minus 1 minus 1 minus x times log base 5 of 3 is equal to 0. Now, x squared minus 1 is the same thing as x squared minus 1 squared. And if I have something in the form a squared minus b squared, this is equal to a plus b times a minus b. So this is going to equal x plus 1 times x minus 1 minus 1 minus x times log base 5 of 3. And negative of 1 minus x is the same thing as, if I distribute this negative sign, positive x minus 1. Now, what I'm going to do is factor out x minus 1. So I get x minus 1 times x plus 1 plus log base 5 of 3. And this is equal to 0. Now this gives me two equations. I get x minus 1 is equal to 0, and x plus 1 plus log base 5 of 3 is equal to 0. So for x minus 1 equals 0, all I have to do is add 1 on both sides, and I get x is equal to 1. For x plus 1 plus log base 5 of 3 is equal to 0, I can subtract 1 and log base 5 of 3 on both sides. So I get x is equal to negative 1 minus log base 5 of 3. And these two are my solutions to this equation.